Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home, and today we're going to talk about a very important topic for a summer garden, pruning. So I hope you join us. So in this episode, which is episode 2 in my summer gardening tips series, I wanted to cover pruning. Pruning is very important to a summer vegetable garden. It's also, for some reason, a very controversial topic. And by that I mean everybody has their own opinion on how to prune tomatoes, if you should even prune tomatoes, if you should top peppers, what to do with yellowing leaves on squash. So I thought I'd give you basically what I'm going to be doing in the garden this summer. A lot of my vegetables do need a good pruning, so the timing is good. This time of year, the garden can start to look really overgrown and jungly, and now is a really good time. We're in mid-July to do some pruning. That's my lazy compost pile. Anyway, I bring this around with me to put my my little garden debris. Makes it a little bit easier. I always use my gloves when I'm pruning because, well, for a lot of garden tasks really, because I have a bit of a sensitivity when something is prickly. The sensitivity is I can't stand that feeling, so I wear gloves when I do this. I just have two basic clippers. In England, I understand they call them secateurs, but one is for kind of the bigger stems and maybe some hardwood, and these are for getting into tight spaces like I'm going to be doing when I'm pruning these tomatoes. But these weren't the best in the world, and they are kind of old, so I was just wondering if you could do me a favor. If you've found a brand of clippers that you really like, can you drop that information in the comment section below, because I am kind of in the market for new ones. But anyway, as you can see, this plant's in pretty good shape. So I'm just going to come in, and where the stem and the leaf meet, I'm going to take out the yellowish leaf. Now, it's very natural in a tomato plant that as the plant grows taller, the leaves towards the bottom start turning yellow and dying. That's a very natural part of its plant growth. And there's nothing wrong with actually cutting everything from below the fruit down, as long as you're leaving some good green growth on the top for photosynthesis and to help the fruit ripen. Look at those interesting looking tomatoes growing here. I don't like when the leaves are touching the ground because, and this is one of the reasons I water from the base, I don't want backsplash to come up and contaminate the leaves and cause any kind of disease. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to also check to see if there are any suckers. Oh, here's a sucker. Right here in the armpit. Now, if I let that continue to grow on like I did this one, it would be a complete new stem. I could take this off and replant it, but I don't think this is getting in the way. I think as it gets bigger, I'm just going to let it climb along the this pole here. So this is how it looks now that I've pruned it. Coming right next to it is this broccoli plant that was so slow growing. I don't know if I'm going to get any kind of broccoli from it this year, any of the spears or anything. But I'm leaving it in just to see. But I have noticed some cabbage moth damage on the leaves. And whereas this isn't, I don't see any cabbage worms on here right now. But something like this Swiss cheesy, this isn't kind of really helping the plant too much anymore. So I'm going to remove this. And let the plant give its energy towards the healthy growth. Now over here in this big mishmash in this bed, I've got so many different plants growing. I've got celery in here, I've got fennel, I've got carrots that have gone to flower, and I've got tomatoes, basil, and some flowers. I've got some beets. So when it comes to pruning, in this bed in particular, I really need to get some airflow going because otherwise my tomatoes are going to suffer, and so is pretty much everything else. So I'm going to start all right. I don't know if you could be noisier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to technically harvest some of these fennel fronds. I'm going to dry them like an herb, like I would dill. And I'm going to cut back quite a lot of the celery and also harvest some of that. So I guess you can consider with certain vegetables, when you're pruning, you're also harvesting. And then I'm going to really deadhead and prune back hard this carrot. I do want to save some seeds, but there's no way if I let all of this go to seed, I'd be able to plant that many carrot seeds in my lifetime. So I'm going to save what I want, and then I'm going to just start deadheading and leaving some of the prettier flowers to go on. So for the fennel, I'm going to take the fronds off from the outside and leave what's growing on in the middle to continue to grow. Now what I'm also hoping is by getting rid of some of these, it can also start putting some more energy into forming a bulb instead of growing these. So I'm going to harvest these. Ooh, does that smell good? Like licorice. These carrot flowers that are really getting in the way, I'm going to cut them kind of hard back. What this is also doing, it's allowing me to really take a look and see what the tomatoes and the other plants underneath are up to. And this is a patio tomato. It's a small cherry tomato plant, but as you can see, the leaves are starting to yellow. So I'm going to trim this the same way I did the big one, just to get rid of the yellow dead leaves. And then with the celery, although I do want to keep some height in the middle, I think that looks pretty cool. I do want to open up again some airflow here, and I don't need that many celery seeds. I still have a big jar of celery seeds from last year. So I do want to leave some on to grow to get some volunteers like I got last year, which was pretty cool. But I don't need that many seeds. With celery, the way you harvest and prune it is you start with this is the way I do it anyway. I do like a cut and come again method where I go on the outside leaves, kind of like I do with celery. I mean, kind of like I do with lettuce. And I take, those are usually the the biggest leaves anyway. Sometimes they are kind of thin. I don't grow them to harvest all at once, so they are much thinner than you would get in a grocery store. But the flavor of homegrown celery is so much more intense than what you get at the grocery store, which is a lot waterier. So I find I don't have to use as much to get some good celery flavor in soups and salads and that kind of stuff. I'm hungry. I thought I'd show you the jungle from this angle, but as you can see, I'm starting to get a ripening tomato. That is very exciting. But I'm going to clean all this up, and I will come back with you and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, well, here's the after. Not quite as much of a jungle as it was, although it's still a bit of a jungle. And over here, I wanted to show you, I have 4 stems on this one. So this tomato plant here is going to be my wild and crazy tomato plant this year, because most of them I've just let 2 stems grow up. And one thing that I'd like to mention about when you're pruning your tomatoes is it's a good idea not to cut off more than about 25% of the leaves at once, because you don't want to send your plant into shock. Pruning peppers also seems to be a bit controversial, and there's plenty of people out there you'll find that swear by topping off their plants, letting them bush out. I don't do any of that with my peppers. Again, I'm just going to let my plants this year tell me when they need pruning. And so far, these look pretty good. I just have one yellow leaf at the bottom, and I'm going to cut that off because a yellowing, sickly, dying leaf is doing nothing to help the plant. And the plant's actually putting energy in trying to keep that leaf alive. So, there you go. Oh, look. Got some nice peppers going on. Last year I did do a lot of pruning on my green beans because I had some kind of a fungus, like a rusty kind of a fungus or something. I don't really know what it was. But this year, thankfully, the only problem I've had with my green beans so far, these are my, not the pole beans, the other ones, bush beans, sorry, is the groundhog. I have a groundhog again. It's a different groundhog than I had 2 years ago. I know, because I would recognize that little booger anywhere. So this is a brand new little groundhog, but he's discovered the bush beans. They're starting to bounce back from his initial trim and prune with new growth. So, ooh, a green bean. I really am very hungry. Cucumbers are another plant that I like to prune very similarly as the tomatoes by removing suckers and that kind of stuff. But within the span of one day, these 3 pots of very healthy looking cucumber plants look like this. And I believe it's the groundhog because I think I'm seeing teeth marks in the leaves, which could be bug damage, but I don't see any bugs. That's one reason why I succession grow cucumbers throughout the season. So in case something happens to these plants, there's still time for me to start new ones, which I did actually this week. This golden gooseneck squash plant is huge, and as you can see, the leaves are really healthy and green. So I'm not going to be pruning any of these, but as it gets later into the summer, when no doubt probably a powdery mildew will start up. Usually happens in very high humidity. You need to have those spores in your garden, and I definitely do because I've had that problem in the past. Then I'll start trimming away some of the larger leaves at the bottom. But for now, I'm not going to do anything to this plant because it's not telling me to. This cauliflower here is starting to form a head finally. I am going to cut just the yellow leaves. Just give it a little bit of a tidying up. So when I'm talking about pruning here today, I'm really talking about vegetables, but there's an entire much more information to learn if you've got certain bushes or berry plants or trees and that kind of thing, which is very specific to each plant. So I don't know if I should be mad at that groundhog or feel blessed that he decided to prune those cucumbers for me. A bit hard for my taste, but hey, he's been pretty well behaved so far. When I've seen him out my window, he's just mostly been going after the clover and the green beans, of course. Anyway, I hope you like this episode of pruning in my summer gardening series. And I think the next time we're going to be doing deadheading, which is very important for your flower garden in the summer. So I hope you subscribe and watch that when it comes out. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And from the Ladies Garden Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye. Say goodbye, lady. Lady says goodbye.